And I know that you, while you're at the University of Maryland, you complete is it the Jimenez-Porter Writers House program?
Oh, that's Jimenez Porter's Writers House program.
Gotcha. So that at that point, you're all in. You're like, I love writing so much, I want to make this a career, or are you just putting a toe in the water? Where are you at that point?
So I went to school. I actually have a bachelor's in multi-platform journalism because when I was going into, even though I knew I loved writing, creative writing, going into college, I was still very much like, this is not something you do full time if you're not Stephen King mindset. But I also knew it was my best skill, and I had been on the newspaper club when I was in high school. And so, and I really still, even though I'm not a journalist at the moment, I still really have a lot of respect for journalism, enjoyed it. So my plan had been do journalism, like sort of journalistic writing as my main job, and then creative writing on the side. Excuse me, sorry. And so what was great about the Jimenez Porter's Writers House program at UMD is that it's a living learning program, which means it's a dorm sort of dedicated to one sort of track or like genre. We also had a global studies living learning program for people interested in international relations, and one based on languages. So where people lived in the dorm and you only spoke, like if you were in the German cluster, you could only speak German when you're in their dorm, like things like that, right? And so the Writers House one was for writers. And so we lived in the dorm and we took a writing workshop. And so you were both living with and working with other writers on top of your actual degree you were doing. Because I actually tried to get a creative writing minor in my school. I remember when I called the school's English department, a lady there, she was like very dismissive and she's like, oh, you don't want to do this. I don't know if you can add that to your course, blah, blah, blah. And I was just so discouraged. Like I'd never got it. And so I actually never ended up getting a official creative writing minor or degree or anything because she dissuaded me from it. And I'm so grateful that Writers House was there and they were such an encouraging environment because I had my first two stories published while I was in Writers House. And then later on, I started Rape while I was there, and that sold a year after I graduated. So without that encouraging environment that we sort of lived and breathed writing there in the Writers House, I don't think I'd be here right now.
Get a bunch of writers together to live together, breathe, eat, talk writing all the time. That's either the world's most brilliant idea or just a terrible idea, but it sounds like it was good.
Well, let me put it like this. So I lived there all 4 years because the program is 2 years. So I did 2 years. And then when I became an RA, my last 2 years, they liked me so much, they asked me to be the RA for that building. So even though I was no longer officially in the program anymore, I still lived in the building. And so I was a big part of like volunteering for events and helping out. And then the last year I was the teaching assistant they had, at the time they had 3 tracks. They had fiction track, poetry track, and screenwriting track. So I was the TA for the fiction track my senior year. So I was there all 4 years and we had some drama because a bunch of writers living together, like seeing each other 24/7. Right, we have big emotions, writers, and we had some blow-ups, like especially my class of 2015. Shout out if you're listening to this. At the time, the director was named Jonna Schmidt, and she's dear, dear, dear friend of mine. I love her. She was like, your class, there's something about your group. I've never seen so many people get in a fight over Hemingway at once. Like,
well, I guess if there is a writer who would appreciate you brawling over them, it would probably be Hemingway. That tracks.
definitely, because it was very much a situation like we were all so passionate and we all had these big, strong opinions. And I was like, in my cohort, I was the youngest person. I was the only freshman because historically, Writers House takes people from sophomore year up. But the director, Jonna, she had recruited me when I was actually still in high school. I had been accepted to UMD, but I had not started there yet. So I was there at one of those like pre-freshman visit days where you come and like you talk to people and talk to programs. And she was displaying there, and I talked to her like, "Yeah, I'm interested in writing and all that stuff." And she's like, "Oh my goodness, like send an application. I know you're not officially enrolled yet, but like if we like your stuff, like let's see what we can do." And so she enrolled me, and I believe I was the first freshman they actually enrolled in the program, like from their first year there. I was in Writers House. And then later on, it's now more common, but so I was also the youngest person in my group. I was only one of 4 women. There's the woman to man ratio was a lot more skewed back then. This was 2013 when I started. And then also I was only one of a couple of people of color in my class as well. So it was very much like very aware that I was sort of in the minority in a lot of different ways. And so there was very much that feeling like people look at me and they're like, what is this freshman doing here? Like seniors, like all this. And I'm just like, that feeling like I have to prove that I am actually as good to be here with the rest of y'all as Jonna saw in me when I was just like a high schooler.
So that is putting, I don't know if there's a way to put a positive spin on that, because it's your experience, but I assume that puts a lot of pressure on you to work harder, to be the exceptional in every. Sounds like you hit every category of exception for the program you could be.
Definitely, yeah, and I was definitely much like, I was very likely like she saw a spark, and she's the director of the program herself. So like she saw a spark there and she opened that door. But I was very much like I have to make this worth it. And so I definitely pushed myself a lot. And like I went hard at it from the beginning, like putting all my stories and really, really going hard at it. And I know some of the I'm looking back, like some of those guys I was having the most fights with, like we're actually good friends now. And they're just like, yeah, Rosie, we're definitely like, we don't know who this girl is. Like you seemed like a child at the time, but like, no, you had the juice. And I was like, yes, I had the juice.